Thanks everyone for joining. Welcome aboard. I'm glad to see a lot of familiar faces out in the audience. Wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing today. So today we're is empowering healthcare and unveiling the potential of private AI solutions within that industry category. Going to be addressing a lot about how the impacts are of private AI in such a highly regulated category. Matthew Davis is with us today, and looking forward, next week we have Discover 3 Ways VCF-powered cloud surpasses traditional public cloud, and Ivan Opernak and Jeremiah Magee are going to be there. I know we've had both of them on before, and they're fantastic speakers. And then coming up, we've got a super special session, actually. We're going to have Democratize AI with VMware Private AI. And Patrick Moorhead, who's the CEO and chief analyst of More, will actually be interviewing Prashant Shenoy, who's our vice president of marketing at the VCF division, as well as Shobit Bhutani. And for those of you who are regulars, you know Shobit Bhutani is one of our principal product marketing managers here with VCF. And we've had Shobit on a couple of times so far, and he's always fantastic. But real quick announcement for those of you who don't know, VMware Explore is coming up here at the end of August. Registrations are now open. So if you go to www.vmware.com/explore, you can get in there and register. I have heard that we are still actually in our pre-reg phase right now, so you can still get the early bird opportunities, and those opportunities might actually extend out a couple of weeks. I've heard rumors that there might be some cheap tickets for a little while longer, but still get yourself out there and register for Explore. So with that, Matthew, how are you? Thanks for joining.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm in Palo Alto. It's warm here today. I'm sorry for the background noise. We've got some people trickling in and out going to lunch right now. So, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. And while you do that, I'm going to get the first poll going so we can kind of see what's going on in the audience and get an idea of who we're talking to today.
Absolutely. So I have been at VMware and now Broadcom for almost 3 years. I started in September of 21. Prior to that, I spent almost 18 years with a pretty large healthcare provider, an 11 hospital, 25,000 employee provider down in the South Florida area. So my focus there was infrastructure and operations. I had over 18 years, 2 or 3 different roles, and learned a lot about healthcare, and obviously was immersed in it for a really significant amount of time. So I'm really happy to be here. It's been a great experience for me coming to VMware and being able to bring all of that practical knowledge and experience I gained on the healthcare provider side over here to help other customers. So
That's fantastic. Oh, and we're definitely glad to have you. Looking at some of these numbers, we've got a lot of folks coming in on this poll. So let's take a look at what we got here. We'll give you another 30 seconds for those of you out there taking the poll. We got about 34% voted, so there's some of you out there who still have yet to participate. All right. Going once, going twice, it's still moving. I'll give you another 10 seconds. Look at that, 60% voted. You guys, I am impressed. 63, let's go. One more. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're going to go ahead and end this poll. I'm going to go ahead and share the results here. So what are your top concerns when considering AI solutions? Select your top 3. Looks like data privacy and security came out absolutely on top. Lack of expertise, 42%. Hey, that is something we can definitely help with here today. Yep. Cost, 36. That's a pretty typical one. And then tied for third, complexity and integration with existing systems. Also 2 places we can absolutely help. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and close this and let you take it away here.
Okay, great. Let's get rolling. So today we're here to talk about AI and the technology impact it's having in healthcare. We're going to start with a little bit of a broader perspective on that impact and highlight many of the challenges and opportunities around AI that we see with our customers. And then next, we're going to review our private AI offering with NVIDIA and the value that we're bringing to healthcare, including how we address a lot of the challenges we'll talk about. And then finally, we'll do some Q&A after the presentation and provide you some next steps. So healthcare has evolved through a lot of different waves of innovation, from the ability to digitize records and run PC applications to the accessibility of web-based portals, patient portals, and the convenience of mobile health apps. Now we stand at the forefront of the next major revolution, which we all know is AI and AI-powered healthcare applications specifically. This isn't just another technological advancement; it's definitely a paradigm shift. AI is enhancing diagnostics, personalizing treatment plans, streamlining administrative workflows, enabling the more effective use of resources, and specifically uncovering fraud, waste, and abuse across healthcare. Period. No matter what your specific part of the vertical is, whether you're a healthcare provider, a payer, a pharmaceutical company, a life sciences company. We're definitely seeing AI use cases being applied across all those places. Even discovering new drug molecules. We'll talk a little bit about that a little later in the presentation. By augmenting the capabilities of healthcare professionals, AI isn't replacing them. That's a lot of the talk I've heard out there from people. It's empowering them to provide faster, more efficient, and higher quality care and output. And the integration of AI, it isn't it's the future of healthcare. But it's also the present. And embracing it is really crucial for any organizations out there that want to lead their competition. So there's definitely a huge struggle going on out there. As you know, Anders, as you mentioned, there's a shortage of talent and knowledge. We see that there's definitely a struggle going on out there to acquire a lot of that. So and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So there are a lot of different types of AI models. There's hundreds of different types. Way too many to talk about, during even for healthcare to talk about, during a reasonable amount of time. So today we're going to focus on essentially what we call predictive AI versus generative AI, and specifically predictive AI is in healthcare is typically specialized machine learning models. And a lot of these specialized machine learning models often require FDA or other regulatory approvals before they can be used, since they directly affect patient care. So FDA approval allows these models to become part of a billable service line or a function that's usually used to treat patients. So, and both predictive and generative AI models present significant advances for healthcare when they're implemented properly. And again, the huge difference there is the FDA approval and the regulatory pieces around predictive AI. So, and you'll see why here. As you can see, the applications for generative AI, and these things over here aren't specific to healthcare, but the applications are really widespread for marketing, supply chain, et cetera. And keeping in mind that this is across the vertical, but these items are also departments or business units inside most healthcare organizations. So there's, again, lots of use cases, and we'll definitely talk more about those. But I want to give you just one example. In software development, the top use of Gen AI is code generation for developers, bar none. So that's revolutionizing code writing assistance for developers. And in healthcare, for the most part, healthcare providers in particular tend to buy applications versus build them. But this still applies, believe it or not, to healthcare providers as well as the rest of the vertical. And in healthcare, you could be coding a program, but you could also be scripting automations or writing an interface to exchange data between different systems. That's all considered development. We see all of those things across healthcare providers as well as the rest of the vertical. So we really think generative AI is transforming healthcare, and it will transform healthcare over the next decade. We'll talk more about healthcare specific use cases and possibilities here in a few slides, but I want to highlight the economic impact and how big it is. It's $4.4 trillion, or at least that's an estimated amount across all industries and use cases. So healthcare is definitely a really large part of that. And just as a good example, this slide is a recent industry survey on planned technology spend for healthcare providers. And you can see the top 5 areas there all have significant tie-in to artificial intelligence. Providers are focusing on these areas, specifically data analytics, architecture and tools, and interoperability technologies, because healthcare is literally sitting on a gold mine of data. But the biggest challenge to implementing AI in healthcare is the lack of data interoperability, period. So the fact that that data comes in, in many cases in different formats, in many cases comes out of legacy systems where there's not an easy method to extract it. There's no API or easy way to pull that data out and then aggregate that data together to run any kind of algorithm against it. So again, focusing on data architecture tools and interoperability is critical to success with AI. In fact, it's one of the underlying core requirements. So it's a really good thing that we see that kind of focus within healthcare providers. So, and then across the rest of the healthcare vertical today, we see a lot of really common leadership goals. And again, you see patient outcomes. This isn't specific to healthcare providers. Patients could be, part of a pharmaceutical company or a life sciences company, right? They could be customers. So there's lots of pieces around improving people's outcomes. And then for the businesses themselves, these healthcare companies, being more streamlined with their operational efficiencies, figuring out their supply chain and managing that more closely, and then their revenue cycle management, with respect to invoicing and reimbursing and things, doing that quicker and with more efficiency, and again being able to address fraud, waste, and abuse are really huge. And then being innovative. Healthcare is definitely all about doing more with less and being innovative on top of that. So, and as you can see, generative AI is a huge piece there. So I'm going to go to this next slide. There's quite a bit here. So I'm going to pause for a second and just, as we explore generative AI, which will give you all a chance to read through this a little bit, we find its applications across the healthcare vertical, transforming operations and creating lots of opportunities for innovation. We see generative AI being used for things like molecule simulation, accelerating drug discovery, improving clinical trial data analysis. All those are testaments to the transformational potential that AI has in healthcare. And I'll just go through some of these use cases. Every healthcare company across the healthcare vertical, regardless of what specialty they have, has regulatory requirements. So that could include reviewing documents and doing data analysis. These are things that are typically done manually or through audits to ensure regulatory adherence. Those are things that can be done with AI and can be reported on and essentially even automatically remediated in some cases. So drug discovery is a really big one. Being able to identify targets, being able to lead compound optimization, do virtual screening, and then something called de novo drug design, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And this is algorithms can generate novel drug molecules from scratch, and that is essentially exploring a chemical space that might not be considered through regular methods. So, and that's something that's completely out of the box where AI is concerned. It's absolutely phenomenal. And then on to the clinical trials around those discovered drugs. They can streamline the clinical trial design to make it more effective. They can recruit patients more effectively, analyze the data, and even do post-market surveillance. So some of that post-market surveillance is significant because AI can analyze real-world data like EHR records, claims data, and even social media to assess drug safety and effectiveness in real-world settings, and potentially identify adverse effects and then monitor long-term outcomes. So all those things together provide a lot of valuable insight for post-market surveillance and for drug safety monitoring and really any kind of clinical decision making. Then patient engagement. And it doesn't have to stop at just patients. That could be customers and employees as well. things like a digital front door, the chatbot that you are all familiar with, that a lot of you may or may not be implementing, as part of your website, right? Something that can communicate with customers, do online appointments, potentially payments, education, and then enhancing their in-room patient experience with things like, ordering and even being able to communicate outside via, phone or text message. There are a lot of those use cases that we see that are actually being trialed at our customers today. So claims processing and automation, the ability to detect fraud, waste, and abuse is huge for payers, providers, for literally everyone across the vertical. Clinical decision support, being able to analyze that patient data and then follow clinical guidelines and improve diagnostic accuracy. Anything they can do to to recognize drug or treatment conflicts inside those pathways of care are really, really important. And then we talked a little bit about fraud, waste, and abuse. It comes back to operational efficiency, being able to effectively manage your resources, and that might mean managing your employees more effectively. From a resource and scheduling perspective, that might mean scheduling resources more effectively, or even integrating and working with supply chain and other parts of the business to promote that operational efficiency. AI has use cases for all of those things. And then, one of the things we talked about earlier, again, code generation, accelerating developer output. Those things are really, really important and are really huge use cases for AI. So we've talked a little bit about use cases and hopefully, got everyone thinking a little bit. Anders, do we have any questions yet that we want to address, or should I keep going?
Nope, doesn't look like we have any, but that's a good gentle reminder that if you do have any questions, go ahead and answer them in the Q&A panel, and we'll get to those right away. And so with that, I think you're free to keep rolling.
All right, thank you. So on to the next one. So we've talked about use cases, and now we're going to talk about challenges a little bit. And I would say that the core challenge, and you all kind of confirm that with some of your answers, privacy and security, including securing your data, is definitely a core challenge. AI offers huge transformative potential, and healthcare is encountering significant challenges with its deployment and its operations. With over 5 years of experience in the space, VMware understands these hurdles, with privacy being that top concern. We think that to effectively leverage AI, enterprises have to incorporate their domain data into the model. Using open models does have significant risks if you're sharing your data. And that raises concerns about the inclusion of sensitive intellectual property and customer data during training, especially. It is really crucial to train, configure, and populate models within access control boundaries to keep inadvertent disclosure of information from happening. And with healthcare, that is of the utmost importance. So, and as part of that, we have an AI philosophy that we call our private AI philosophy. It's composed of 4 core tenets around choice, compliance, cost, and performance. So the first piece of that rather, is having a distributed approach. Compute and train models should reside next to where the data is created, processed, and consumed, and definitely not the other way around. We see a lot of that with customers who are essentially moving their data to the model, and in the short term, that's definitely something a lot of customers are pursuing. But what they're finding out is when it really comes time to go true production and scale, that the amount of data and the risk and the cost of migrating all of that data to where the model sits is really prohibitive. It's just not something that's financially feasible in most cases. So a distributed approach is definitely the way to go. And then managing disparate locations. We see AI infrastructure. If AI is becoming part of all these applications, and it is, it's going to span disparate locations all the time. And we need to have the capability to maintain centralized governance and operations around that. So, and that includes being able to protect and secure all of that data as well. So, we believe in organizations' data should remain private, not used to train, tune, or augment any commercial models or initiatives without express knowledge and consent. And we do see some of that with some of the solutions that are out there. Some of those things are happening, whether the consumer or the customer realizes it or not. And so, we think organizations should maintain full control of their data and can leverage other models with that shared data set as their business needs require, and not until then. It's up to them. They've got total control. And then finally, the last piece of that, the access control and audit. As part of that, we, end-to-end access controls for governance and visibility into access and changes to AI models, the associated training data, and even the applications themselves are a must. And so that is definitely part of the functionality that we address. So we move from privacy over to choice, and well, let's go through these real quick. Choice, compliance, cost, and performance. From a choice perspective, organizations need to be able to choose the model that best fits their needs. So they definitely want access to a broad ecosystem of models, so that you've got a lot of variety of choice for your different use cases. And you are going to have different use cases where you require different models. From a cost perspective, AI is really expensive. The AI models are complex and costly to architect since they're rapidly evolving with new vendors. There's lots of SaaS components out there and what I would call bleeding edge AI software, which is continuously launched and deployed. AI itself is, typically built with a container as the unit of deployment. And as such, with microservices like that, there are lots of deployment requests around that. So, with things being continuously launched and deployed, self-service and automated deployment and the ability to scale up and scale down resources are absolutely critical if you're going to be cost effective with AI. So another piece is performance. AI models require significant infrastructure resources. Fine-tuning, customizing, deploying, querying them can be really intensive, and then scaling up can be challenging without access to the right resources. So efficient allocation and balancing of specialized hardware like GPUs across the organization is critical to ensure fast response times from those models when they're doing inferencing. And the last one, compliance. Organizations in healthcare have different compliance and legal needs that enterprise solutions, including generative AI, have to meet. So generative AI access control, workload placement, and audit readiness are absolutely vital when you're deploying these models. And with that, I'm going to take us over to our private AI foundation with NVIDIA offering. So Broadcom and NVIDIA have collaborated to develop a joint AI platform called VMware Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA. This joint platform enables enterprises to fine-tune LLM models, actually really any models, deploy retrieval augmented generation, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, and run inference workloads in their data centers. We also, with this solution, we address privacy, choice, cost, performance, and compliance, all the things we brought up. At the base of this is our VMware Cloud Foundation platform, which is the infrastructure layer for all of our AI workloads, giving a highly scalable, robust private cloud platform. And then if you look there in the diagram, the blue layer in the middle is what we call the VMware Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA add-on. So that add-on, it really simplifies AI deployment by offering a bunch of automation tools, deep learning VM images, a vectorized database, which is something you will absolutely need in order to deploy generative AI, as well as the components to manage and maintain that database, including scaling it up, scaling it down with resources, scaling out horizontally with multiple databases, the ability to back up and restore, and so on. So it's all in there. It's essentially everything you need to get an AI environment up and running, including GPU monitoring capability, which is another really important piece. So the NVIDIA AI Enterprise portion gives the AI software, essentially gives software for spinning up models on top of VMware Cloud Foundation. This software is really the easy button for enabling and accelerating AI model deployment. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about what's in the green layer, and it's pretty detailed. So again, this will be the time, Anders, if there's any questions, feel free to shout those out. I'll start with NVIDIA NIM. It's a set of microservices designed to speed up the deployment of AI. So those are all, the NIM is microservices that support NVIDIA AI Foundation models. And we'll talk about what those foundation models are and go into a little bit of depth on those in just a few more slides. But all of this is built on the foundation of their NVIDIA Triton inference server, NVIDIA Tensor RT, and Tensor RT LLM, which is their large language model, and PyTorch. So NIM is essentially engineered to help deploy AI in production at scale, scale up, scale down, and that type of thing. And the next portion there is called NVIDIA NeMo Retriever. NeMo Retriever is part of their NeMo platform, and that's actually part of their retrieval augmented generation offering. And we'll talk about, again, what that is in just a few slides here. So that's, again, more microservices. So that's more containers, enabling organizations to connect custom models to business data and deliver more accurate responses. So that's essentially what retrieval augmented generation does. And then the next portion there is the RAG LLM operator. That operator makes it really easy to deploy RAG applications into production. It just streamlines the deployment and helps you create pipelines using NVIDIA AI workflows. There are even some examples within the offering there that let you actually integrate your workflows into production without rewriting a lot of code. It really simplifies the process. They have a GPU operator component that automates the lifecycle management of the software that's required to use GPUs with Kubernetes, and enables some GPU performance, utilization, and telemetry. So in other words, you can actually look more in depth at what your GPUs are doing and how they're performing, which is, they're a really expensive piece of hardware. So it's definitely something you want to have eyes on. And I'm just going to keep going here.
Yeah. I don't see any questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
I think we're doing pretty good.
Perfect. So, and now that we've gone through our private AI foundation offering with NVIDIA, there is another piece to this. We do have customers who already have, I would say, projects or initiatives underway that don't involve NVIDIA, and they want a platform to run things. And so we also have the ability to run our private AI platform as an open ecosystem. And this will give you a little bit of an idea of the different frameworks and some of the models and some of the solutions out there that we can support on our platform. And again, if you notice, NVIDIA is part of that, but they're definitely not the only piece. So, and for those folks who have AI efforts underway, this is to show that we support numerous frameworks and running, scaling, and maintaining, operationalizing any model or models that those frameworks will support. So now we're going to get on to talking about deployment and what that looks like in a traditional environment. It's typically a long process. I have seen customers where their deployment process involves for better or worse, data scientists trying to upload containers to something in the cloud, or doing something manually under their desk, to try to copy files and things like that, which is, to me, that's has almost as many challenges with deploying with an actual traditional 3-tier environment here with all the pieces separated. So the advantage we have with VMware Cloud Foundation here is that we have an ecosystem. All these pieces are integrated and standardized. So operationalizing AI, and I'm going to do air quotes here, is the second biggest challenge in healthcare, behind making healthcare data interoperable. Manual deployment, especially when you're dealing with something like this that potentially will use containers and microservices. There could be dozens or even of hundreds of deployments every week. So it's definitely not something you want to do manually.
That's for sure. So hey, we went ahead and launched the second poll, just on covering some of the cost questions that were out there. Seemed like
Okay.
an opportune time to do so. We'll give people another couple of minutes to answer here. We're looking at about 32% voted. Give you a break and a chance to breathe. This sort of came in on the heels of slide number 11 and 12. So we'll go another 10 seconds, and then we do have a question here for you.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to end the poll. Give you a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Couple more under the wire. All right. So the big question today on that was, do you have a standard method for calculating true total cost for each of your AI initiatives? Had no yeses. So that's interesting. 62% were definite no's and 38% were not sure's. So that kind of begs the question, how much control does an organization have over the AI models and its data?
Control over, yeah, I would think that would have everything to do with cost and with placement,
Mm-hmm.
if that's what you mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I have yet to run across a customer that was truly able to calculate that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge challenge. It's something that we've definitely been able to overcome with VMware and Broadcom. And I would say, for customers that are looking at this stuff, that's absolutely something we can help you with, in terms of being able to calculate that total cost of ownership on a per project basis or
Mm-hmm.
a per item basis. There are ways to break all those things down. They're just not very easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so
All right. Just a little segue there. I think we can keep rolling. Still looking in the Q&A. Nothing's coming up in the thread, so folks, feel free to ask questions as we're going. So I guess we can keep it rolling.
all right. So with automated deployment, we touched on that, right? Having self-service capability on top of that is absolutely critical, especially from a faster time to market and a productivity and an efficiency standpoint. So I wanted to touch on that. I know we're a little bit behind on time here, I think, based on my slides. Um, so the next thing I want to run through is a little bit about leveraging VCF as the platform, because again, private AI runs on top of our VMware Cloud Foundation ecosystem or our platform, and we do have lots of components and capability there that give you the ability to scale quickly. Whether that's with new physical hardware or virtual hardware, with virtual machines. The management and operations are really critical, as far as being able to not only scale up and scale down, but to troubleshoot and create new environments. And then cost and capacity planning. Again, cost is really critical with AI. I think that while a lot of companies are kind of blindly investing money. Honestly, at this point, I think the time is coming where um, belts are tightening with the economy, having challenges, and I think organizations are starting to look at these initiatives, and they want to see, bottom line, what the TCO and potentially what the return on investment might be. So how much it costs, and what is it really and truly going to bring back to the business over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. So all that stuff is really critical. We do have a lot of cost and capacity planning pieces built into VCF that will let you calculate a lot of that. And then from a dashboard perspective, I would absolutely, recommend building dashboards to monitor and maintain all of those pieces of infrastructure. It's real easy to do out of the box. Um, and then figuring out, what your bottlenecks or what your issues might be with respect to troubleshooting that will allow you to get back to service and to resolve your issues quickly. So, I guess the thing to take away from all of this is, you need that unified management experience. You're going to have a lot of trouble without it, and you're certainly not going to be able to automate and orchestrate your environment. You do need cyber threat detection, which is another piece that VCF brings to the table. And then finally, being able to integrate and build your offering. Building something for AI from the ground up, with a deployment and a maintenance mechanism and a monitoring mechanism, that's a lot. That's a lot. I would say that the chances of folks trying to build things from scratch, the chances of failure are probably really high, especially if you're just delving into the AI realm and you don't necessarily have a lot of experienced staff, and people that have gone through the process before. You need help, and so that's where VMware and NVIDIA step in with these offerings. So we talked about privacy and security and compliance a little bit earlier, but I did want to touch on some of the other pieces with VCF. There are a lot of enhanced security features across this entire solution. With NVIDIA, they do regular monitoring and prompt for regular updates to limit exposures to CVEs and other vulnerabilities that are out there. VCF has the ability to integrate identity providers, which means that you can get more granular with your access. You can use two-factor authentication to provide additional security. And then from a system and an infrastructure perspective, the hardware that your infrastructure is running on is all encrypted. It's using secure boot, virtual TPM, and so on. So all those things together are definitely ensuring robust security and identity management for your AI workloads. So with this solution, you have the capability to do GPU monitoring, and then elevate your performance with NIM. Obviously, we talked a little bit about NIM being the easy button for deploying AI at scale, and then you've got the choice that we talked about with large language models and just AI models in general. So I'm going to go into that choice a little bit more. So with this solution, you have a really wide variety of models to choose from NVIDIA. And then there are some open source and third-party models, and I'll give you some examples. The enterprise-ready NVIDIA Foundation models, something they've got available is the NVIDIA Nemotron 3B. As far as foundation models tuned by NVIDIA, they actually have an NVIDIA version of the Llama 2 model, which if you all are familiar with that, that's the Facebook open source AI model. But NVIDIA has taken a version of that and fine-tuned it for you. So you've got the option of open source models through things like Hugging Face, and FLAN UL20B and FPT Neox 20B are apparently two really popular ones. As far as third-party models, you have the ability to, if you don't want fine-tuning by NVIDIA, for example, you have the ability to run Llama 2 straight as is, stable diffusion, and a bunch more solutions. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about models in particular, but I have yet to have a customer or anyone really bring a model or a question like that to me that we aren't able to address or to then run on private AI. So, and we talked a little bit about simplifying and optimizing costs, and I mentioned retrieval augmented generation. So we're going to go into that here as we kind of wrap up before we go to Q&A. And another piece is the vectorized database. You'll see that when we talk about a RAG workflow here in just a second. Deep learning VM templates, which you're definitely going to need depending on what kind of models and use cases you're deploying. And then you have the ability to wrap all of that into essentially a service catalog where you can pick and choose what you need through a self-service portal. So I'm going to move on here, and we're going to talk about retrieval augmented generation. So retrieval augmented generation is essentially a technique for enhancing the accuracy and reliability of generative AI models with data fetched from external sources. And you say, okay, well, how does that relate to healthcare? And how does that relate to AI models? Well, do we have, I don't know if we have any folks out there that have dealt with AI before, or that have AI and they're using AI in their workplace, in their healthcare workplace now. But we definitely have a lot of folks who have experienced something called hallucinations, which is literally an inconsistent or inaccurate response from a large language model. So this is primarily why retrieval augmented generation was invented or created, is to help refine the accuracy of that model. So there's three components here, basically. The retrieval piece, if you see down here in the lower left-hand corner, when a user sends a large language model a query, right? When you get on, let's say, ChatGPT or Google Gemini or some other large language model, and you submit a query, if that model is using retrieval augmented generation, before it sends the query to the system itself, first it's going to go out and retrieve relevant information from an external knowledge source, like a knowledge base or a set of documents, which is what you see it doing here as part of the process. And this is done using a retriever model. If you remember a little bit earlier, we referenced the NVIDIA retrievers. So that retriever is actually what goes out and grabs that data and then ranks the relevance of documents based on the query that you submit. So it goes out and grabs that extra stuff. Then when you submit that query, it actually augments your submission with the data that it obtained. So in other words, it doesn't submit the query to ChatGPT or to Google Gemini first. It grabs that extra data to help give it context. I've heard it called grounding, meaning that that additional data that's augmented the generation process. It helps the LLM to ground its response in factual information, which really reduces the likelihood of generating a bunch of nonsensical outputs. Like, I add an apple and an orange, and I think I saw some things for ChatGPT where it tells people they've got a banana and some other stuff that none of it makes any sense.
That's actually one of the questions that came in was wondering if hallucinations are still a major issue with the LLMs.
Absolutely, they are. Yep, and they'll continue to be. So with that augmentation and helping ground that response, finally the LLM generates a response based on not just the original query, but also the augmented information as well. So the benefits of that are you reduce those hallucinations. You're obviously, you're going to improve your factual accuracy, especially in domains where the large language model you're using might not have a lot of training data. There might just not be a lot available. Um, so it's also interesting. One of the other benefits of retrieval augmented generation is it lets you expand your knowledge base. So, meaning it lets a large language model tap into a much wider range of information than what was contained in their training data. And that's really, really important. In short, what that means is you don't have to retrain that model to teach it to be more accurate and more concise with its responses. So, and there are a couple of considerations there. Your choice of retriever. Obviously, in this case, we're using the NVIDIA retriever as part of the solution here. And then another one is your choice of knowledge source. Obviously, what you connect or what you let that RAG process ingest is going to be important. You want to make sure that that's really accurate. So now that we've explained how RAG works at a very high level and how it fills a significant gap with large language models and how they work, there's another huge benefit. RAG gives models sources that they can cite, kind of like footnotes in a research paper. And what that does is, especially for healthcare, that builds trust and the ability to verify the output. And then, so let's talk a little bit about how healthcare is using retrieval augmented generation in particular. Users can essentially have conversations with data repositories with this method, opening up new kinds of experiences. And so what this means is the applications for RAG are almost limitless. They could be multiple times the number of available data sets. For example, a generative AI model supplemented with a medical index or a medical encyclopedia or a dictionary could be a great assistant for a doctor or nurse. A former researcher would benefit from an assistant linked to a library of drug information and data. Think about the power of being able to turn technical or policy manuals, videos, or even logs into resources called knowledge bases that can enhance your LLMs. These sources can enable use cases such as customer support, employee training, continuing education, developer productivity. I mean, the list goes on. So the RAG example here is using private AI with the NVIDIA NeMo platform. So this particular solution, again, attests to the power of the solution is that it's ready to go. It's like buying a car that's already passed the safety checks and is ready to drive versus trying to build a car from components on your own. It sounds like a really neat project, but it's probably not very practical. So these components can be built into RAG workflows pretty seamlessly. And so, this just shows how everything connects together from the requester using the app to the data being retrieved and processed to the augmented response that gets sent back to the application. So I spent quite a bit of time there. Do we have any questions about this before we keep going?
Not seeing any so far. We've been kind of handling them in line as they've been coming in, so I think we can keep going.
All right. And then I believe we're to the Q&A part.
All righty. Well, I think we've got one more poll if we want to take a second and do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
All righty. And this one is, which of these VMware Private AI use cases interest you the most? Pick your top 3. And we'll let this run for a couple minutes. And QA is wide open. So if anybody has any questions while we're running the poll, feel free to come on in. There we go. Ooh. As the clickbait says, the answers may surprise you. Watching the answers coming in here, we're at 18% voted. All right. Still moving in. We'll give you another 10, 15 seconds here, and we'll talk about the results. All righty. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 48% voted. We're going to end the poll. 50% voted under the wire. All righty. Let's look at these
Not bad.
results here. Yeah, not bad at all. So looks like predictive analytics, clinical decision support, and patient outs, 60%, followed 50% operational efficiency, addressing fraud, waste, and abuse. Chatbot, digital front door customer service. Interesting. All right. And
Hmm.
then AI assisted code development, and then improve reimbursement and claims processing.
All
Sort of
right.
wild. Yeah.
Sounds like we have a lot of healthcare providers out there on the call.
People are asking educated questions and giving educated answers here. This is good. This is good. And then we've got a message up in the link for more information on the Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA webpage. The link is in there.
Okay.
Um, and I am not seeing any questions for us to answer. So I think
Okay.
hopefully that means everybody is clear on what's going on, and we're doing okay. So give it another couple minutes here, and if nobody chips in, we can call it a day. We
Sounds
got we
good.
got got some applause. Definitely got some applause from the audience. So,
Oh,
hey,
great. Okay.
we definitely appreciate you coming in today, and it was a very thorough presentation. I know this is a place where we have a lot of folks who are, really starting to get their operationalization of AI implementation and understanding what the cost benefits are under their belt. And so, even getting into these conversations for a lot of folks who aren't there yet to start thinking about it is so critical.
Yeah, it's definitely something you've got to have at the forefront of your thoughts behind all of this. Making sure you've got a strategy in place, you've got the business alignment with what you're doing with these different AI projects. That each one of these projects gets defined as a use case,
Mhm.
and make sure that you've got the equivalent output, so you can make sure that your business case aligns with what you're trying to do with your model. Yeah, it's all very important.
All right, let's see. We got looked like there was another question came in here. Here we go. This one. I'm wondering if the NVIDIA partnership will continue in the era of Broadcom. Good stuff, and thank you for your teams.
Yeah,
Thank you and your teams. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. I don't think the NVIDIA Broadcom partnership is going anywhere.
No, no. And I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to hear a little bit more about that at Explore, but don't know for sure. Just an urban legend, but I suspect we're going to definitely get into that.
No teasers.
No teasers, none at all. Alrighty, any parting shots before we call it a day?
No, sir.
All right, looking good. All right, I think that with that we can wrap it up. So thanks again for joining us. When hopefully we can get you back soon and talk some more. I know this is particularly when we're talking about heavily regulated industries. Folks have a lot of questions because this is where we have to be the most careful, and sort of the implementation of a lot of more innovative technologies is making sure that all of our ducks are in a row. So definitely
Yeah,
appreciate you
absolutely.
coming in. All righty, sir. Well, thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day, and thanks again to our audience for joining. Happy to see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and thanks for coming back. And just as a reminder, you can check on our webpage for the full schedule of these webinars coming up here, and we are adding new ones every day, so be sure to check back. So thanks again, folks. Take care.
Take care, everyone.